afternoon, everyone. I am so excited about this panel. We are here to bring the fun to Meeting of the Minds. We're really excited about talking about nighttime activities and the nighttime economy and the role that technology and data can and is playing in helping to facilitate nighttime activities in cities. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We have two great panelists with us who are on the front lines of helping to manage the nighttime economy in San Francisco and Sacramento. So joining us today, we have Tina Lee Vogt, who is the program manager for Code Compliance Division for the City of Sacramento. We also have Jocelyn Kane, who is the former executive director for the City of San Francisco's Entertainment Commission. And we just had a great lunchtime discussion, so really excited to dive right in. So the first question is, from Amsterdam to Fort Lauderdale, from Iowa City to London and many, many other communities, this concept of the night mayor and the night economy manager seems to really be taking off. Can you really tell the audience what exactly is the nighttime economy and what is the role of a nighttime manager or mayor?
You want me to take it?
I'll have you take it first.
All right. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting us nighttime people to your daytime event that starts at 7:30 in the morning. My brain kind of hurts a little because you guys are super smart and you're talking about really important things, but we feel like the nighttime economy is just as important. I'm sure, and I can't see any of you because it's like a rock concert, but you have nighttime opportunities in your cities. If you haven't been out to them lately, please go out there or they'll go away. Many, many cities are realizing that the nighttime economy is an economy, it's an industry in and of itself. It has an economic value. You can do an economic impact study. You can find out not only how much it feeds into taxes into your local government general fund, but also obviously into the economy as a whole. And then the jobs. There's thousands and thousands of people who work in the nighttime economy. And we're not just talking about alcohol-related industries. We're talking about the invisible people who clean your office space, who run your hospitals, who do all kinds of things that get paid probably the lowest wages in your cities, live the farthest away, and we'll bring some of this up later. But this nighttime economy is super important. It shouldn't be overlooked. Cities are recognizing this and then deciding that within their organizations they need someone to look out for these small businesses essentially and employees that work and provide value for all the citizens. And so in San Francisco it's called an Entertainment Commission, and Tina will tell you what they call it here. In Amsterdam, it was called a night mayor, only in a loose translation, and it freaks out real mayors. And so they say nighttime economy manager, which is a really big mouthful, so you can call it whatever the hell you want to call it. But it's somebody who is doing the work for the city or externally, or a combination of the two, to look out for this super valuable part of your city.
For my role in the City of Sacramento, I'm the manager for our entertainment program, and so we don't have a formal night manager, but it's really an important concept. We have a team that really works to kind of make sure our nightlife is functioning well. It's really about facilitating and bringing all the pieces together, because a lot of times when people think about nighttime or nighttime economy, they're thinking bars, they're thinking restaurants, they're thinking public safety, they're thinking police, but it's about so much more. It's about zoning, it's about planning, it's about traffic, it's about parking. There's a lot of different things that you have to do to draw all the information together. And hopefully a few of you were able to see some of our nightlife, or at least some of our venues. If you took the tour and went along K Street, that's a really great example in terms of at 10th and K Street in Sacramento, the population of people at that intersection at noon on a Friday is dwarfed by the population of people there on a Friday night. We have thousands of people there at night. And when you think about how you plan, a lot of times cities plan for day use. They plan for people that are quite frankly sober. And when you're talking about planning for nightlife, you have to plan for people who may not be quite as sober. You need to have signage for people to be able to see. So a lot of our role is really trying to make sure that we facilitate what folks need to have to be successful in having a really strong nightlife economy.
Great. And so on that note, I would love to hear some specific examples about both what you have done with the city of San Francisco and in Sacramento, and what are some of the benefits of really looking at the nighttime economy more holistically by having this role and doing some of the facilitation work that you mentioned.
I would say in Sacramento, the best thing we do is that we really do bring all the players together. I think what's really nice about not having it, it's not just one person's responsibility, it's really a great team. I have the chance, I was joking at the table earlier, I work with primarily fire and police, and so I have a Sergeant, Michelle Gigante, that I work with, and then someone in fire, Elizabeth McDowell, and I call us the ladies of the nightlife, because we work together to make sure the nightlife works well. And a really good example of that is when we have a venue that's coming in, that we really work to make sure they understand the rules, but it's also working with our zoning and making sure that zoning's done well. We reach out to our parking folks to make sure that if they're leaving, parking is really done well. We get an idea of what their plan is in terms of their business model. A lot of these folks are small business owners who don't really know what they're doing. A lot of them had a dream. They saw some Miami Vice episode and thought, it'd be cool to have a club. And so they decide to open a club. But they don't really understand what it takes to navigate through zoning, through building, through ABC, what it takes to have security. So we see our job as really trying to make sure that those businesses are successful.
Miami Vice? How old are they here?
Hey, there was a remake with Jamie Foxx, I'm sorry.
Anyway, so beyond that, and again, like this is a really cool group of people that we typically as nightlife sort of folks don't get to talk to. San Francisco, we obviously have the regulatory piece and the permitting piece, but we also then got a chance, because the Entertainment Commission's been around since 2003, which is actually pretty long in this work, and we got a chance to get our head above water and look into the planning pipeline. And one of the things I really wanted to talk to you guys about is this notion that everyone keeps suggesting, that bring more people into downtowns because it's better for mobility and sustainability and environmental impacts and all this stuff. And if you bring all of these people downtown and you build these monstrous like apartment buildings, not in a bad way, but big, you will bring a lot of people downtown, right? And so what's going on downtown in many places is nightlife. And they're there because there aren't very many people around. That's a natural thing that nightlife operators do. If you don't consider what's there before you decide to bring in all of these new residents and have them next to their work and their play and their sleep, this little radius, you will cause conflicts and you will have problems in your city. So in San Francisco, we looked down the pipeline, we did some mapping, we used the technology that we had to figure out that all of the new development that was coming was going to go smack on top of where all of our old nightlife venues had been and continued to provide live music and the good stuff that people came to San Francisco for. And so instead of running and screaming and hiding, we went forward, and at the time with the woman who is now the mayor, she was Supervisor Breed, created a piece of legislation that people typically call agent of change nowadays, but it's basically a protection ordinance that required developers to jump through one more hoop, yes they do, if they were going to build something within 300 radial feet of a nightlife operation, to come to the Entertainment Commission in San Francisco, because we had that apparatus, but in your city you can use anything, and work sensibly and smart to build a residential facility, and now hotel motel uses as well, thoughtfully, so that the nighttime operation isn't impacted, the residents aren't impacted. So there's super good models for that. I'm happy to share when we're done.
Well, so on this topic, I think there's more that we wanted to chat about this. Some other best practices for how residential and entertainment uses can successfully coexist. You had talked at lunch a little bit about the building code and the role of planning and development. So I'm just curious if you wanted to add any more to that, as well as if there are other best practices for making those two uses coexist peacefully.
Right. Well, so again, what we're talking about is getting ahead of the development. But if it turns out that doesn't happen, and all of a sudden one day you look up and there's an apartment building in front of your nightlife operation. What we did in San Francisco, and I know they do here in Sacramento, is work with venues to use best practices, to work with security, to ensure, again, that potential conflicts don't become real conflicts. But short of that, the best thing you can do is plan for your fun, which doesn't mean make Disneyland. It just means don't put things that don't belong together.
Well, and I think it's all just about communication. I think the biggest thing that I end up doing is, we'll have a club that's been around for years and someone will move in, and I always joke that people want to live next to a club until they live next to a club. And then suddenly they're like, it's noisy. And I think that people think that the noise is music. The noise is this. Hey man, what you doing? I'll see you at the next club. That's the noise that most people don't really plan for. And sometimes it's just getting people to communicate. My biggest challenge sometimes is saying to the neighbor, did you just go and talk to that business and let them know that something's bothering you? And we had this venue that moved across the street from literally the dive bar. It's called Bar. Bar is in the title. You think you'd know that people are going to get drunk. And they would just complain. And I would always say, did you just go and talk to people? And so a lot of it is really opening those channels of communication, having realistic expectations when people move in. For us, when we issue an entertainment permit, we always issue a set of conditions. And part of those conditions have some really good neighbor policies. And one of those that we've added is they need to have a phone number that someone can call and reach someone that's a manager for whenever they complain. It seems really stupid and silly, but it makes a big difference. So communication, a lot of what we do, there's some technology that we can use. It's really about people and building relationships and having people have realistic expectations and facilitation and coordination.
Right.
That's what makes it really successful. Because when you get those barriers down, it's amazing how people can really coexist. Because for every example I have of a business that doesn't do well, I have a business owner that is just awesome and their neighbors love them because they tell them things like, you know what, we're gonna have a big event in our parking lot. Here's some tickets for you. We wanted to make sure that you knew about it. It's amazing how just that simple effort goes so long in really building a really good relationship and activating spaces.
So the takeaway for that is, and I say this like once a day in some capacity or another, like 99% of people in your city want to be happy. So they'll come to the middle ground to find happy. There's 1% who want to be right. Just think about that. They're never going to be happy.
Yes.
So those are the right fighters, right?
Yeah,
that are that one, but that ultimately most people with good communication will find that happy place, and then some will have to move.
Yeah.
So speaking of some of these conflicts that can come up, so communication is clearly one way to address them. Because of what we focus on at this conference, we'd love to dive into the role of technology and data in addressing any of these challenges, whether it's sound, whether it's mobility, signage. Where have you seen some good examples where technology and data have really helped to resolve some of those conflicts or have been additional tools for some of the businesses that you work with or government?
Well, I'm going to give my shameless plug for Jocelyn. The Responsible Hospitality Institute does a great event every year. It's a Sociable City Summit. And Sacramento participates, and I've gone the last 4 years. And some of the best tools that we've used and implemented, we've learned and picked up at this summit. And one of the things that we use that's a great tool, and it's for sound management, and I think Jocelyn and I would agree, don't call it noise. Because someone else's noise is you're good. Someone else's noise is someone rocking music. So don't call it noise, but they have really good sound management tools. And so we found a tool that we could use to remotely manage noise and sound. See, I said myself, sound. And what was great about it is that we could leave it somewhere and we could test it. And so we could actually listen to the sound over an extended period of time. So instead of having like some sound consultant that you pay a lot of money for to sit there doing this, you actually have a machine or equipment that you can use and you can monitor it. So you can get baseline, you can get highs and lows. It also comes with an app that's great. So then that way you can actually give it to a neighbor. So neighbors will always make it seem like, oh my God, they're so loud. It's horrible. And then when you look at the reading, you're like, oh, yeah, never mind. and then they realize it's not that loud.
And I think that what goes along with the technology piece, which is that sound meter or that remote, recorder, is a good sound ordinance. And so you have to have a standard to measure against. And so one thing you can go back to your cities and look at is your sound ordinance. Typically they're lacking. They don't have specific numbers to hit. They don't have a standard, so you won't know if that is, in fact, a sound that's too loud or not too loud or too sustained or whatever it is. So that's the other piece of that puzzle. And I said this at lunch too, there are other examples certainly of using technology, but this is an industry about people. This is sociable spaces. So, sometimes this little device is the worst enemy of a social space. And we've had in San Francisco many, many sort of theft problems because people bring these phones in, set them down, and then they get stolen. I'd rather them. Technology is maybe not the answer. For businesses, yes, on the margin there are definitely things they can use. Security ID scanners we talked about as well. But that ultimately, sociable spaces are for socializing with people and eyes and mouths.
So we keep the smartphones out of the bars, but we still use the technology to address some of these issues.
Right.
So a couple ones I did want to dive more into. Parking management and mobility. Any thoughts on what you've done in Sacramento or in San Francisco to use technology to support parking services for people using nightlife? Or mobility services, even better.
Right, so, mobility, we call it transportation. Again, I told you my brain hurts because all of these acronyms this last couple of days, but we started doing some work 3 or 4 years ago on nighttime transportation. Those two words, they go together. So your transportation people in here, think about that. There is the need to move all of these people who work in the nighttime economy around. A lot of them are carrying wads of cash around. A lot of them are like vulnerable populations. A lot of them are a little bit drunk with high heels or shoes in their hand and tiny little dresses. But there is a serious lack of transportation at nighttime. And there are reasons for that, and we understand that it's a challenge, certainly for transit agencies to consider elongating hours, but this notion of other ways, like Chariot is one in San Francisco that's an on-demand van system, and that last mile problem is really important, but that also, if you look at this from through an equity lens, those people are the least served. They're the lowest wages. They come from the farthest away. They need service just like everybody else. So I'm going to implore you to think about nighttime transportation and think about all the different ways that we've heard about in the last couple of days to use those new innovative ways to help move maybe a smaller amount of people, but just as important people to and from where they need to get to.
I think for us, parking was a really big part of it. And if you had a chance to do the workshop with Matt Ironman, I know he's in the room, he's a parking guru, he's a god. And he's really worked with us a lot in terms of making sure that parking is available and accessible. And I think what's really important is if you're going to have people drive in, making sure that they have safe spaces they can go to, but also how you manage people in and out. A lot of times when people think of transportation, they think of transportation in. They don't think of transportation out. And again, visualizing 10th and K Streets here, we have well over 3,000 to 4,000 people emptying out of a club at 1:30 at night. And so it's really problematic to figure out how we do traffic, how we get them out of parking lots. And so we work with folks like Matt, with our transportation people, with our traffic management, in terms of how you move people in and out. But we also work really closely with our businesses, and they also think about how they move people in and out. And so being able to have parking where people can prepay, so when they leave, they don't have to pay to leave. It seems like something really minor, but not having people stack up, it's not just inconvenience. From a public safety standpoint, that causes fights. If you're stuck and you're sitting there and you're behind some guy and they're like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay, people get mad, they're pissed, they're trying to leave, it's the end of the night. You have a lot of fights in parking lots if they're not well managed. So those are the kind of things to really keep in mind when you're thinking about planning your spaces, is not just getting people in, but how you get them out at the end of the night is really important. And it's not just about your patrons. I think Jocelyn brings up an excellent point. A lot of times when we talk about the nightlife economy, or we think about different things, we think about customers, we think about people coming in. There's an amazing workforce that deserves to be supported that by and large get ignored. And a lot of them they're not making a lot of money. It's a lot of women. It's a lot of people who at the end of the night, they're leaving way after when people are gone. And so really looking at those spaces and making sure that they're safe as well. Because again, it's all about your economy.
Right. And one of the innovations actually that we've been seeing a lot, and I work with Responsible Hospitality Institute all over the world, is the Lyft and Uber, right, the TNCs, and when they come in and someone's had a few drinks and we've had many cases where people just got into a stranger's car because they're not sure if that's their ride. So people are starting to, with the companies assisting, create zones for the TNCs, just like you would see at many airports now, that you move people out of that really crowded area where fights tend to, and the sidewalks may not accommodate the amount of people inside when they come out. We have a common closing hour in California. It sucks. Those people who come from Europe and other parts of the world, you should be able to be done when you're done. That's just my opinion. But our common closing hour creates problems. So the Lyft and Uber have started to use, again, wayfinding, lighting, to move people to the locations where they can pick up in an orderly fashion, not in the middle of the street, their proper vehicle. It's a safety concern for many, many people, and these companies, TNCs, are gonna make it or break it on this public safety issue. More stories about horrific things that happen in a Lyft or an Uber, and those guys are gone.
Yeah, and it's an excellent point that you make about the equity issues and really who is served and not served by transportation in the nighttime economy. I think we've talked a lot about people sort of ending their night, but there's also a lot of the hotel workers that need to leave their houses at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. to get to their daytime shift. So there's a lot of key considerations around how to have both TNC services as well as transportation services to support all of those folks. So the next question I wanted to ask is around what's on the horizon for the nighttime economy? What are some innovations? What are some key considerations? How do you see things changing in the next 5 to 10 years for the nighttime economy?
I think for me, when I first started, I've been doing this since 2009, you pretty much had like bars and just clubs. And the type of entertainment has just changed so dramatically. We have arcades, we have a lot of brew pubs, just the different type of entertainment that we have. And so I think that being nimble is what I would really suggest for a city, and it's going to be organic. You're not going to make your entertainment districts. Your entertainment districts are going to make themselves. But I think the best thing that you can do is just be nimble and open and always start with a how, not a no. It's really easy when people say they want to do a bar or they want to do a club and they have some kind of interesting idea to say, well, no, that's stupid, but really being open. So for me, I think you're just seeing different types of space. For us, brew pubs and little small microbreweries are really big, and they have a different kind of sociability than what you see in just a regular bar. And so it's being able to address those different kind of concepts and being open to them is probably the best way to kind of move forward.
So Melanie teed this up because I told her I wanted to talk about this. So part of my work is in nightlife and nightlife management, and the other part is cannabis. I said it. I said the word. Cannabis is a big industry, and it's legal in many, many states. We expect, hopefully, federally legal sooner than later. And there's medical and recreational, but cannabis is a billion-dollar industry. It has impacts, positive impacts as well as obviously some negative, somewhat similar to nightlife in some way. We're just talking about another inebriant. So Social consumption is the new horizon for any state that already has commercial cannabis that's legal. And the mix of the drink space and the cannabis space is also something to think about. So any of you in private sector, businesses, think about that cannabis supply chain. It's huge and it's coming at you. And the social consumption issue is one that is going to mix with the nighttime economy issues, and you need to be prepared to deal with that. I live in Palm Springs, California. Thank you. And we have lounges. We have actual cannabis lounges downtown already. We're ready for this. It's really important for us to embrace cannabis in the Coachella Valley, and so hopefully, whether you use it or not, doesn't matter, I really don't. It's coming. Be ready.
So we've got about another minute or two for closing thoughts. So one key takeaway for either private industry of how they could support the nighttime economy, things that you need, or cities when you go back, the city officials, when you go back to your city, things that you would like them to consider. A key takeaway for either sector.
Well, I talk all the time. I would say consider placing somebody inside your city if you are a city official or policymaker, or can talk to someone who would understand this. I mean, ultimately, this is a new lens for you guys in this room, so I don't expect you to get all of what we're talking about, just like I don't understand so much of what's being said up here either, but if you would just put on some nighttime goggles and go back to where you live and work and take a look, and if you haven't been out past 10 p.m. or later, go out and take a look. Things change. It's really, really good for you to see it, especially if you work regulating it in some way. Go into some place that you've been terrified to go into and see what's in there, because you never know what you'll find.
I would strongly urge that you really do have an open mind and look at it as something that's a benefit. So many times when you talk to people about you're going to open a bar, you're going to open a restaurant or something, people have a really negative view. But it really does activate spaces in a really strong and positive way if it's managed well. So if you manage your nighttime well, it can be a wonderful kind of economy driver, and work with your businesses. I think one of the reasons why Sacramento was really successful is our businesses work really closely with us. And they are just as much of a partner as any city agency. And in fact, for the RHA, the Sociable Summit that's coming up, I'm actually bringing about 4 of my businesses are paying on their own to come with us so they can actually learn about what we do. And so it's really important that you do that. And the going out at night, and don't do 10. You need to be there at midnight. You need to be there at closing.
I said after
but
10.
really go out and see it, because it's a whole different world if you really go out and look at it at night.
Great, so we are out of time. I hope this gave you some new perspectives and ideas about how to manage fun in your cities. And please help me in thanking these 2 fantastic panelists.